Welcome to Rappler Talk. I'm Ezra Faraz. I'm joined here today by Bryce Maddock, the CEO and co-founder of Taskus, a BPO company that specializes in outsourcing for some of the best tech companies in the world, among them Uber, Tinder, and Groupon. Thank you for joining us today, Bryce.
Thanks, Ezra. Thanks for having me.
So I understand you just raised your Series A of $15 million, but before we get to that, can we sort of go back to your beginning? I understand your first office was in Cavite, Bacoor, and that was very intentional.
Yeah, so it was. It was intentional because we had no money when we started the business. So my business partner and myself had just graduated from college, and we were 21-year-old kids with a dream. We thought that we could change the way the world worked. And the initial concept for Taskus was to be more of a virtual assistant business. So we went online and we hired people in 16 different countries, virtual assistants, to work for us. And in that process, we discovered the Philippines and found that people in the Philippines were just excellent at this work. I mean, a service-oriented culture, incredibly well-educated and hardworking. And so we hired one of these teammates to start an office for us, and he was from Cavite. He said, "This is the best place to start the office." And so I flew over to the Philippines for the first time and found myself on Aguinaldo Highway in a 3-story building, a 1-room office over an auto garage. And so that's where the business started, and it was intentional because we had no money, we had really no other choice. But the nice consequence of that was that we found that working in the provinces yielded way better results than here in the center of Metro Manila. And the reason was, so many people today who are working in the call center industry are commuting in 1 hour, 2 hours, sometimes 3 hours each way. And so we wanted to be an employer that didn't expect people to come to us. We wanted to be an employer that brought jobs to where the people actually lived.
So your location in Cavite helps with retention.
It absolutely does. And so, today we're proud to say that we have less than 40% annual attrition, which is a number I'd like to continue to drive down, but our competitors have 80% plus. It's very likely that, if you're working in a big BPO right now, a year from now, odds would say you won't be there. And I think a lot of that has to do with the stress that people have sitting in the back of a bus or on the back of a jeepney going to work in the center of Metro Manila. And our idea is cut down on commute time and give people more time to spend with their families.
Are there any particular challenges of operating in the province?
Well, there was initially. I mean, we had a 3 Mbps PLDT connection, which was really terrible. There are definitely brownouts, and so we've gotten around that as the business has gotten bigger. We've been able to install redundant internet, have a gen set. I think the other challenge is one where you have clients who are coming in from the United States and from Europe, and you have to get them familiar with the idea of commuting an hour out to the provinces. And so those would probably be the 2 biggest challenges, but by and large, it's been a very, very net positive for our business.
So you have a very, very impressive roster of clients. Can you maybe explain a little about the work that you do for some of them?
Yeah, sure. So, when we started Taskus as more of a traditional outsourcing company, what we found was when we talked to teammates, they all said the same thing. I didn't like my last job. I worked for AT&T or Comcast or Time Warner, and all I did was get measured by my metrics and get yelled at by angry Americans who are using a product that I didn't get to use in my daily life. And so we said, well, what would it be like if we went out to our friends who had startup businesses who really care about the employee experience and got them to outsource? And that's been a massive success for us. And the reason I think is because when you talk about some of our clients, Uber and Tinder and Groupon, all of these products are available here in the Philippines. And so the people who support them also use those products in their daily lives. And I think that personal connection that our teammates have with the products makes it a lot easier for them to just get excited about coming to work, which is really the most important thing when you talk about delivering great support to customers and also cutting down on that attrition, which really plagues this industry.
So what kind of support do they provide the company?
Companies? So, it's half of our business today is customer support. So this is if you've taken an Uber ride and you're unsatisfied with your service or you have a question about a fare, people will email into Uber, and Taskus is one of the companies that Uber uses to respond to those tickets. For Tinder, it's content moderation in addition to email support. We do other things, sort of specialized back office processes. We work with a lot of big e-commerce companies. So we have an entire Photoshop team that sits in Photoshop retouching matching photos. We write product descriptions, we do lead generation. So it's a pretty varied basket of services, but really we're working with companies who have 200, 300 employees in the United States or in Europe, Canada, and in Australia, and they're coming to Taskus and saying, listen, over the next year, we're going to grow to 2,000 or 3,000 employees. How can you help us do that in a way that's both cost effective and maintains the quality of our service?
What I think is really cool is you're not only servicing companies from Silicon Valley, but you're also trying to emulate the culture of some of those Silicon Valley startups.
Yeah.
Can you maybe explain your culture at Taskus?
Yeah, so the truth about the contact center industry in Manila is that it's almost all millennials who are working in these offices. And you know, as a millennial myself, I feel like I do a much better job relating to them than some of the people who are running outsourcing companies in the Philippines. And so, you know, our goal at Taskus is to put the employee first, understand what their experience is like. And so this is everything from our mascot, which is the lizard bear. The lizard bear is a perfect, crazy example of entrepreneurial spirit. And it's completely different than a lot of the traditional outsourcing companies here in the Philippines. The same thing kind of goes for our facilities. And so we just built a new 3-story facility in the fort on the corner of 24th and 7th. And we have a gym, we've got a massage room, we've sleeping facilities. Some of the crazy things we do too is the top 2% of performers at Taskus get to go on vacation every quarter. So we'll take them, we just went to Boracay, we're gonna go to Palawan next quarter. I go on the trip with them, we drink, we party, we have a really, really good time. And so it's some of these like non-traditional things that some of, I think, our parents' generation would never have done those things. And certainly the people who are running most outsourcing businesses think like that generation. I think having a more fresh perspective is really helpful in helping us to identify with what the employees are actually going through and what motivates them and gets them excited about coming to work.
How do these perks and different policies have an effect on work culture and productivity?
Yeah, so I think what ends up happening is when you give people the ability to be, to a more flexible working arrangement, you let them decide kind of, what their breaks are going to look like, what their schedule is going to look like. You give them the ability to have a little bit of fun. They then own the outcomes of their work in a much more way where they're much more responsible for them. And so I think what we've seen kind of over and over and over again is that by giving back to the employees become much more bought into what Taskus is doing. And they own kind of what it is to be a Taskus teammate, right? They feel a personal responsibility for that. And that's helped us to deliver a very consistent level of service, which we feel is amongst the best in the industry.
What do you think it'll take to get more employers to buy into this idea in the Philippines, to make it more employee-centric?
I think what's happening at Taskus is kind of showing this, and you see a lot of people who are beginning to emulate our model. So today we've got just over 3,200 full-time employees. At the start of the year we had 1,500. So we've more than doubled in size in the last 6 months. And I think as you begin to kind of get over a few thousand employees, some of the larger companies begin to catch on. And so we're beginning to see some of the larger players really begin to pay lip service, at least, to caring about the employee experience. And I think you'll see more and more of that. I truly believe that for everybody, not just Taskus, but there is a positive ROI in investing in that employee experience. But the truth is, you can't just do it with money. You have to do it with your heart. And so for me, this means I'm in the Philippines once a month for a week, and I sit on the floor when I'm here. I try not to have as much of a hierarchy, which is something you see a lot of in call centers. I don't want people to call me sir, right? Call me Bryce. I give out my email. It's bryce@taskus.com. Anybody can email me. And I get lots of emails, good things, bad things, and everything in between. And so my goal is really to create a flat organization where everybody is treated with the respect that they deserve. And I think that that's something you can't buy, right? You can't buy that spirit. And that spirit is truly what Taskus is.
Congratulations again on the Series A funding, $15 million.
Thank you.
What are you going to do with it?
Well, so what we're most excited about is continue to invest in facilities. And so we've identified a few next sites. We're going to open another facility in Cavite. We're opening a facility in Pampanga, which we're really excited about. It's going to be our biggest facility. And so the goal is to continue to push ourselves further into the provincial areas of the Philippines and bring work to where the people actually live. Further to that, we're working on our first foray into technology. And so this is in a conceptual stage only right now, but I believe that the future of work looks like your cell phone. So it's going to be people working from their iPhones, their iPads, their Android tablets, their netbooks, and not necessarily having to go into an office. Today, the Philippines has over 7,000 islands. There are 100 million Filipinos, but only 15 million of them live in Manila. So the other 85 million Filipinos haven't been impacted as greatly by the power of the outsourcing industry and the million people that are employed by the industry today. And so we feel a responsibility to bring work to the people, to empower them to work whenever and wherever they are. And so we want to build a platform that empowers people to work from home or from a co-working space, and to support some of our enterprise clients in a much more flexible working arrangement. And so it's in a conceptual phase only. I think within 12 months you'll see a beta launch of this platform. But the idea is to be the first enterprise outsourcing company to empower people to work from home.
So you were one of the early people to really believe in the Philippines as a destination for creating new businesses. Why would you encourage other investors and entrepreneurs from other countries to also look at the Philippines as this go-to destination?
So I think once you've actually stepped foot on the ground in the Philippines, it's impossible not to get excited about the potential of this country. A couple of really interesting stats. As I said, there's 100 million Filipinos. 53% of those are under the age of 25. And so this country is demographically perfect. I mean, in the next 25 years, the potential of the Philippines is massive. And so it's not just the BPO industry, consumer industry, education industry. I mean, there's just tons and tons and tons of opportunities here. And so, I find myself driving up EDSA, looking at the billboards and coming up with different business ideas and getting excited about that. I think what makes the Philippines a unique place, at least from a sort of American perspective, is that there's such a connection between our two countries. English is spoken fluently here, so it's very easy to get around, and the people are just so nice. So I would encourage any business owner to take a look at the Philippines as a place to do BPO work, or as a place to invest in order to sell their own product. I have a number of friends who have come here to start their own outsourcing companies and have turned around and started startups in the Philippines, right? Creating businesses that are servicing the Filipino customer. And I could see myself in the future, sort of a life past Taskus, doing the same thing. So I think it's an incredible country, and the best way to see it is to come and be on the ground.
Based on your experiences with Taskus, what advice would you give entrepreneurs setting up in the Philippines?
I think the truth is you got to come to the country yourself. You got to meet the people face to face. Where I've made mistakes, it's having Skype phone calls and trusting that was the person that I was actually speaking to. I found that there's definitely a disconnect, right, between a video phone call and actually meeting someone face to face. I think the second thing is hire the best lawyers and accountants you can find, because navigating a new legal framework, whether it's the Philippines or any other country, is tough. And I found the hard way that investing in legal advice and investing in the right accounting advice is really, really important. And so I would advise a company to invest really heavily in that, and then find a local partner. Where we've had the most success is by finding young entrepreneurial Filipinos to run our operations for us, and we make them partners in our business. And so that's something that I would really encourage, is those three things. Come on the ground, meet the people face to face, look them in the eyes, get really good advice from accountants and lawyers, and then also find a local partner who can run the operations for you.
How do you find that Filipino with the real entrepreneurial streak in them?
So what I found is that when we started hiring for Taskus, I was able to interview a lot of these people face to face, and there's just a sense you get from someone, whether they want to work a career or build their own business. And I think, again, that's something that really needs to be done face to face on the ground here in the Philippines. I definitely strongly encourage against just deferring to a Skype interview. The other thing I would say is there's a lot of startup communities in the Philippines, particularly here in Manila, a little bit in Cebu. I would recommend going out to those networking events and finding people who are building some of these cool companies and trying to see if you can convince them to work with you.
What are your immediate goals for Taskus?
My immediate goal for Taskus is that in the next 18 months, I want us to go to 10,000 employees. So today, here in the Philippines, we have 3,200. I want that number to more than triple in the next 18 months by the end of 2016. The other goal that I've got is to continue to invest in innovative technologies that will empower people to work whenever and wherever they are. And so those are the two metrics that I measure myself by. Are we making success towards more of an innovative work model? And are we making strides towards being a bigger company that can impact more people's lives here in the Philippines.
How do you plan to hire 10,000 people?
It's been crazy so far. So, this year we've gone from 1,500 to 3,200. So there have been weeks when we've hired over 100 people. It's been crazy. And I think one of the things that I'm most proud of is that Taskus gets over 60% of its new employees from referrals from current employees. And so that's a metric that's really unmatched in the BPO industry. And so what we do is, instead of investing in fancy billboards, we invest in incredible employee experiences and have employees talk about themselves. I don't know if you've driven around the Philippines, but there are all these examples of these very corny billboards with happy Filipino stock imagery saying, "Come for the job, stay for the career, tele something," right? I mean, it's always the same name for these big BPOs. And the sad thing is, for most of those companies, the only happy people are the ones on the billboards. The people inside the offices are miserable. And so we flip that on its head. Instead of having a big marketing budget where we're putting up billboards, we're taking all of our money and investing it in creating an incredible employee experience and trusting that the employees will refer their friends.
And so the qualified endorsements usually tend to work out better.
Absolutely, right? Than the phony advertisements. Yeah.
So the outlook for Taskus is certainly bright. What's your forecast for the entire BPO industry in the Philippines?
I think it's massive. I mean, you've got an industry that in the last 15 years has gone from almost no one to over 1 million people employed by it. I think the opportunity to live at home but work abroad has an incredible impact on a country that previously has relied a lot on the OFW program to support the economy. And so I think the prospects for the country are very, very bright. There definitely are some challenges, infrastructure challenges, needing to work on the power grid, needing to make sure rule of law is very stable. But I've seen incredible strides even in the last 6 years that I've been here.
Why would you encourage more Filipinos to get into the BPO industry at this point in time?
So I think that the BPO industry is a connection to the West and to learning a lot of the best practices that some of the most innovative companies in the world have to offer. I'm incredibly excited by the fact that you've got startups starting here. And I think a lot of that has been inspired by companies that have worked in the BPO industry. And so, where Taskus is bringing in some of the most exciting startups and exposing hundreds and thousands of people to them, I think that a lot of the people who work at Taskus will go on to start their own businesses because they'll be inspired by the experience of having supported these businesses.
Can you maybe share an example of a former Taskus employee who eventually went on to pursue their own business?
Absolutely. So I had a teammate come to me early on. This was probably 3 years ago in a focus group discussion. And she said, "Listen, Bryce, I really want to be a comic book artist." And I said to her, if you want to be a comic book artist, that's what you should go and do. She was conflicted about whether she wanted to continue in her career at Taskus. And so I encouraged her to leave and start her own comic book business. And this last trip, about 6 weeks ago, I got a package of her first 2 comics, which she completely illustrated. And so that was, to me, that was like very, very touching because I encouraged her to go off and start her own business, pursue her passion, and she did, and it's turned into a great thing. We've got a number of other examples. We had a teammate early on who did incredible work, and he's gone on to be a founding partner of a Singaporean startup called Trade Gecko, and he's supporting all of their operations here in the Philippines. And there's many examples like that of teammates who have worked at Taskus and have gone on to pursue their passions, because we really encourage that. And hopefully we are a platform that enables people to get the skill set and the confidence that they need to go on and start their own business.
I've been speaking with Bryce Maddock, the co-founder and CEO of Taskus, a BPO company in the Philippines that specializes in outsourcing for some of the best tech companies in the United States, among them Uber, Tinder, and Groupon. I'm Ezra Faraz, and thank you for joining Rappler Talk.